Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian M. Hauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the places at Hawk Blogger. And today's a first look. Wednesday means we are going to go deep into the matchup with the upcoming Seahawks opponent. This week, that is the Washington Commanders. And I'm very excited to welcome a first-time guest, Ben Standig, who formerly of The Athletic, currently the best name for any Substack or podcast out there. Last Man Standig. Yes, Standig. Using the last name really, really well. How are you doing, Ben?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you. Well, any friend of Jerry Brewer is a friend of mine. I mean, I haven't had a chance to actually hang out with Jerry for a while, but when I asked for who's the best guy to talk Commanders football, he was like, "Oh, let me connect you to Ben." So very excited to
I
have this chance
appreciate
to
that,
meet.
Jerry.
Yeah. So, it's an interesting matchup between these two teams. There's a lot kind of in front of both teams, and a lot kind of riding on this game, especially for Washington. Before we kind of get into all the things about this, folks that don't know you, what's your background and how did you get into doing what you're doing?
Oh, sure. Well, I grew up here in the DC area, rooted for all the teams. Uh, I did study some journalism in college and thought maybe I would do this, but I went away and did other stuff for a decade plus, and then I just kind of wandered back into this space and haven't left. I mean, if you've ever met me at a cocktail party, I talk sports, and that's kind of about it. So it was just kind of a no-brainer to get back into this. And fortunately, I got on the Commanders beat full time, like around 2015, and obviously it was a bit of a slog to say the least. So
Mm.
last year was a lot of fun, and this year's been a little more trying. But yeah, I mean, I cover sports for a living, so no complaints.
Yeah. For a while, it seemed like the Commanders' biggest news was not about what was going on the field. So it's
No,
probably nice to talk about football a little bit more. And what a rookie year for Jayden Daniels. I was absolutely floored, as were I'm sure a lot of people. You don't often see rookie quarterbacks legitimately throw themselves into the MVP conversation. And you definitely don't see them go all the way to the conference championship game very often. But that's exactly what they did. And it was Dan Quinn's first year as well. It hasn't gone quite as well this year. And I'm curious, everyone's got their opinions about why, but I'd love to hear yours.
yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, you're right. I mean, I think in terms of like last year, it's not enough just to say he was the rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year. I think you can make a real argument, and we're sort of seeing that play out this year that he should have been the MVP last year
Yeah.
because the roster. I mean, they had the second pick in the draft to get Jayden Daniels. Obviously, great call there. Everything worked out great, and he looks like he could be their guy for the next decade. All that, but the roster was like a patchwork group at best. They had obviously a few interesting players and some vets they brought in, but this was not a very deep team. Now a lot went their way last year, and that's kind of what we're seeing this year. Is that a lot is not going their way this year, injuries primarily. But that was not a team that was anywhere close to being among the more talented in the league. And the fact that they got to 12 wins, I know the playoffs don't count as far as the MVP race goes, but to get to 12 wins for this group that right now largely the same group. They added even they added up players. Debo Samuel, Laremy Tunsil. The draft picks. It does not work as well. The injuries have been a huge problem, particularly wide receiver and defensive end. The receiver they're getting back, Terry McLaurin. They got him back last week, but we'll see if he's playing this week because he
Right.
re-injured himself. Debo Samuel has been a good find. He's been a little bit off the last couple weeks, last couple of games though, because of his heel injury. They've lost their leading sacker and Dorance Armstrong. They're really thin at a bunch of spots. And just also like, look, the Hail Mary was the number one play last year in the league. The play against the Bears. I mean, it was literally, I think, voted the moment of the year by the NFL, whoever votes for those things. But this year, they're not having those moments. Everything's kind of going the opposite way. And, they're in a tough spot right now heading into this deadline and this game, frankly. If they lose this game and the next week against Detroit, also at home, you could probably start talking about 2026. So they really need to figure out how to pull off a win or two here.
Yeah, and kind of going back to that offseason, I mean, I was like, all right, they struck gold in Jayden Daniels. Even Mikey Stainer still seemed to have a strong end to his rookie year last year. And they had a lot of veterans mixed in there. So I was like, all right, they're going to go out there. They're going to try to improve the offensive line. They're going to try to get Jayden Daniels some more legitimate weapons beyond Terry McLaurin, and probably try to get a little younger on defense. And they got Laremy Tunsil, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then Deebo Samuel is like an old dude that it doesn't necessarily have that much left. I didn't understand why that was the play instead of getting like a George Pickens or a number of other receiving options. And defensively, I look at that group and it's like it's looking kind of old. And the Javon Kinlaw they went for, and I don't know. It confused me. Did you see a like a logic to their offseason?
Yes, I think so. This is where it gets interesting. It goes back to my point a minute ago about whether Jayden Daniels should have really been in the MVP discussion, because I think that when Adam Peters came on board, he was, of course, previously like the assistant GM with the 49ers, comes over at his very opening press conference. He was asked a question: what does he think about the inherited roster? And we all sort of, looking at it, famously reference back to that often, because he kind of gave a look like he just smelled a bottle of the old milk and had a like, but he didn't say that, but he kind of had a look like that. So, and it's accurate. The draft classes that came before him, the 3 or 4 before, really have not yielded much. The veteran roster was not much, so they didn't have a lot to work with. So, in order to supplement the team to help build the culture, the first year they went out and brought in a lot of veterans, guys like Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz. I don't know, as much, again, to set the culture, lead example as anything else. Well, then that worked extremely well. So now they're in a bit of a pickle. How do you take the team that just made the NFC Championship game, but treat it like a team that's only in year 2 of essentially a roster rebuild? So they had already traded away some picks to get Marshawn Lattimore, right? They end up trading away other picks to get Laremy Tunsil. They traded a 5th-round pick for Deebo Samuel. Now, Adam Peters drafted Deebo Samuel, so that's the connection there. And honestly, he's been pretty good. And it was only a 1-year deal. Like, he only has 1 year left, so it's not a huge risk. The issue is, though, that in order to keep this going, they decided we don't have a lot of we still want to screw up the roster longer term. So instead of giving out bigger contracts to, say, free agents, they went out and did the 1-year deal with a ton of veterans. They have the 3rd fewest amount of players under contract for next year. So they have a lot of 1-year deals. But when you bring in a lot of older guys, the risk is there's no upside, right? They may come in and be solid and they may help you fill in some holes, but there's no extra layer there. And that's kind of what's going on this year. They're having all these injuries, and then the vets have been okay. Like most of the moves he made have been good. Javon Kinlaw has actually been really good for them. I mean, I'm not saying like Pro Bowl, but like he's been fine. And there were questions about that. And Tunsil's been good. He's not allowed a sack. He did get hurt in this last game, but he has not a lot of sack this year, and so on. But again, when you start to have these other injuries and their lack of depth still remains, now you start getting exposed, and that's kind of unfortunate for them. What's happened here, and again, it was just honestly sort of bad luck in the best of ways to have had all the success they had with a roster that was still sort of in the middle stages of a bit of a rebuild.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I have my own biases. I loved watching Jayden Daniels play last year. I loved what the Commanders had going. I'm a big fan of Dan Quinn from his time here in Seattle. I really wanted them to go young and build around this quarterback while he's in his rookie deal. And I fear a little bit, regardless of what happens in this game, that this is going to be a lost season in roster building for them, that they're going to regret not going and having a little bit longer view than just this one season. But who knows? We will find that out. So let's talk about this team this year. So Terry McLaurin, massive part of this offense, huge part of this offense, was holding out. They gave him a new deal, but everyone's talking about the Jayden Daniels injury. He's been out for quite a bit. He just got back last game, had a beautiful touchdown catch, and then went out with a quad injury. And so talk to us about like where things are with Terry McLaurin, how important he is to this offense, and what is your expectation? It sounds like he felt optimistic, at least after the game, that he'd play.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a huge part to this group. I mean, he's one of the guys that, represents all the futility that was happening here. In that he got here in 2019, he's been the leading receiver ever since. He, prior to Jayden Daniels, he went through like a dozen quarterbacks, none of whom, if I told you, hey, would you want this person starting for Seattle at any point in their career, you'd be like, oh, sign me up.
You mean like Sam
Never.
Howell?
Oh, yeah, Sam Howell. Yep, that was the last year here for sure. And then the other receivers were also kind of a bit of a motley crew that he had kind of working around him. So to have Jayden Daniels last year and Debo this year was huge, but he is still the main like receiver. Like Debo's more of this like playmaker, gadgety kind of a receiver. But unfortunately, he had this contract dispute this offseason, and he skipped all of training camp in the midst of that. Obviously, you guys heard about that. Coincidental or not, we all always have the same impression, right? Okay, if a guy misses training camp, he's going to come back and he's going to pull a muscle, pull a hamstring, do something. Well, the guy who had not missed it, who had played like 72 games in a row, unfortunately, in week 3, at the end of a 50-something yard catch, hurt his quad. He misses a month, comes back, like you said, made a great touchdown catch. He had another great catch down the sideline. Terry McLaurin is the king of, no, that's not a catch. And then you see the replay, you're like, oh my God, how did that happen? But he injured his quad again on that play. Now, he admitted he was pretty cautious in his recovery coming back, that he like wanted to make sure that it was good so that, he wasn't, he was giving the team max performance and also not hurting himself, in terms of like being able to stay on the field. And now this happened. So I think it's at least iffy. We'll see if he's able to get out there this week. He was optimistic, but that was, 10 minutes after the game, and who knows for sure. So we'll see this week if he's able to go. And if he's not, they're going to be up against it. As I said, Debo's been dealing with a heel injury. He missed one game in between in the last 3, but the 2 he's played, not very efficient at all after being really strong. So I don't know where he's at either right now.
And then the one that really got my attention was when Laremy Tunsil, the left tackle, the move that I loved that they made this offseason. He went out and it was a hamstring injury. And that's, who knows the severity. Generally, if the guy's out with a hamstring, it seems like it's going to be potentially tough to get him back on a short week. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I mean, linemen are obviously a different species than the rest of us. It really often feels like it's with them. It is the classic, just rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. So I never assume that a lineman will miss a game, but you're right. I mean, obviously, hamstrings can be tricky. He did try to go back into the game and ultimately decided it was not for him. We haven't had a chance to talk to him. He wasn't in the locker room. I don't believe so after the game. And Dan Quinn kind of punted on injury updates for him until Wednesday, when he has to put out the injury report. So we will see. Obviously, that's been key. He's been a guy that they could just kind of leave out there one-on-one. As I said, he had not a lot of sack this year. Have played fairly well. He's obviously one of the better pass protectors in the league. They had a role with Brandon Coleman, who was their primary starting left tackle last year as a rookie. Then they bring in Tunsil and Josh Connerly in the draft, who you guys know, obviously. And they moved Coleman to left guard. And after week 2, they benched both of their starting guards. And Coleman wasn't even active for 5 games in a row. So he was this was the first game he was active, fortuitous, or I don't know. But like, he was there. So they put him back in there. And I think he was fine. It's just that they were trying to protect Jayden Daniels as best they could, so they went for a massive upgrade at that important spot. But yeah, if Tunsil's not there, it's a huge deal. But at least with Coleman, it's a guy who played the spot last year, is a young guy that athletically is very gifted. It's just a matter of young guys just putting it all together.
Yeah, and then the other, you'd mentioned this, but the other kind of injury thing that happened recently, Dorance Armstrong, who had been leading, I think still leading the team in pressures, was put on, I think, season-ending IR after the Cowboys game, if I remember correctly. How big of a loss was that for the defense?
Yeah, really big. I mean, he was having a breakout year. He, again, as you said, he was leading the team in sacks. But even beyond that, like, I'm not suggesting he's necessarily going to the Pro Bowl or anything like that. But the problem is that they lost their other starting defensive end, Dietrich Wise, in week 2. He's out for the year. They lost the guy that replaced Wise, Javonte Jean-Baptiste. They lost him to a pectoral injury that may keep him out of the year. And now they lose Armstrong. They really, like, if there are obviously different types of defensive ends. There's your sleek pass rusher types, like they have Von Miller here, but they don't want Von Miller playing the majority of downs. They want him to be, limited to um, passing downs. The only guys they have who are sort of big enough to play kind of every down are two guys that weren't even on the roster in week one. And, they can move defensive tackles around if they want. Well, now Javon Kinlaw hurt his shoulder in this last game. I think he'll be fine, but there's limited depth there. They dropped Frankie Louvu down from playing more of a linebacker to playing more of an end in this game, and he's obviously a very energetic player who can get after the quarterback. But now all of a sudden you're playing him out of position. That led to bringing another linebacker, Jordan McGee, onto the field, a second-year guy who very athletic. They need more speed on defense, so that putting him in there works. But he's also still learning the game, and he's been on the wrong end of some big plays that they've allowed. So it is the domino effect there is legit. And I think when you're going up against a guy like Mahomes and Dak Prescott, as they have the last two games, it's hard to be like, well, if our defense could have done this, we could have stopped these quarterbacks. Obviously, they're very good, but when you don't, classic, when you don't have enough of a pass rush to disrupt their timing, they're going to pick you apart. And ultimately, that's kind of what's been happening here the last two games. Not necessarily even the cornerback, but just finding the openings. They're down their starting safety as well. So they're finding defense have been finding opportunities. And, I know the way Sam Darnold's been playing, I'm imagining he'll probably do the same.
Yeah, we were talking to Ben Standig of Last Man Standig, also formerly of The Athletic as well. So a couple of guys as I was watching Commanders games that jumped out to me on the defensive side. I think Daron Payne, I've always liked Daron Payne. I think he still seems like he's playing at a high level. Jacob Martin, old Seahawk draft pick, who I've always had a soft spot for, formerly traded for Jadeveon Clowney. He's seemed to be coming on pretty strong the last couple of games, maybe getting some more reps with Armstrong out or something along those lines. Those are probably the two defenders. And then Mr. Lattimore, who you mentioned they traded for last year and was a good cornerback, and then was the most picked on cornerback I'd seen and seemed like his career was tail spinning. He's been in pretty good coverage, even against Dallas when George Pickens was making catches. Lattimore was right in his lap. So what do you make of those guys and anyone else that for you has stood out?
Yeah, no, Jacob Martin was the guy they brought in. They last year's problem primarily was stopping the run on the perimeter. Saquon Barkley crushed everybody last year, but particularly this group. So they did go make an effort to bring in guys who could help on the edge as pass rushers and run stoppers. Jacob Martin's not the biggest guy, but he's proven to be pretty effective. And he had already sort of cracked the higher end rotation even before some of these injuries happened. He's just not the biggest guy. He's like in the 240s. So, there's only so much, you can do with him. But no, he's been helpful for sure. No doubt about it. Lattimore is an interesting one. The trade, again, last year, they're like 7-2 at the trade deadline. Nobody was anticipating this happening. But at that point, they were like, okay, well, we're a legitimate team here that can make the playoffs, but our cornerbacks are a disaster. So what do we do? So they decided to go ahead and make this deal for Lattimore, who still is under contract for a couple years beyond last season. And unfortunately, he was hurt at the time. And then more unfortunate when he played, it just did not work. Now, he's been better this year. He's been healthier. Cornerbacks are always going to get picked on. That's just the reality. And like you said, even in some of the times where, completions are happening, he's right there. And he made a really good play on Mahomes this game to get an interception. So as much as fans here have been sort of frustrated with him because of the trade investment that they made, he's been fine. Yes, he's not the same Pro Bowl guy that he once was, but, he can still play. And Trey Amos, their rookie on the other side, the second round pick, has been lights out. I mean, it's to the point where I have to sort of remind myself that he's only a rookie because we barely talk about him amid all the other stuff. Normally, a second round corner who starts and plays really well, you'd be like, oh, that's really exciting. It's just we've sort of taken it for granted how well he's largely played. So, they've been fine. But again, when you don't have a pass rush and their issue has been a lot of miscommunication in the secondary, they seem to think they cleaned it up a bit this last game against Kansas City. So hopefully for their sake, that carries over into facing, Seattle. But that's kind of the deal. And I would also mention, I guess, Bobby Wagner, obviously, he is still, lights out as a run defender, as a leader, as a guy who has, can see all the angles. He's great. but Father Time is also, in this discussion. And at 35, teams are able to get him into coverage at times. And when that's happening, especially when guys are moving like across the field, it's a problem. So Washington has done a pretty good job of hiding him so he's not in those spots. But, once or twice a game, it's going to happen. And if the defense finds the receiver, it tends to turn into a big play.
Yeah, definitely saw that, and didn't love to see it. We love Bobby Wagner out here.
Yeah.
Also understand coverage has been an issue for a few years, so it's not surprising that it's still one. So it seems to me, Ben, that this isn't the best analysis you're going to hear all day, but it's pretty important whether Jayden Daniels plays or not in this game. He missed this last game with a hamstring injury. It sounds like, based on what we've heard, that they're expecting him to practice today, or at least that's what Dan Quinn said. When I looked around, I was a little surprised to see and hear some question about, like, some people soured a little bit on Jayden Daniels this year, even within the Washington fan base. And there's been some question about whether Marcus Mariota is playing better than him or not. I went and did some comparisons, which I won't bore you with. But when I compared Jayden Daniels' statistics this year to last year, his passing numbers are pretty much identical. He is completing a lower percentage of his passes. That's one of the biggest differences. But he has a higher touchdown rate this year, 5.5 versus 5.2 last year. He has a lower interception rate, 0.7 versus 1.9. His success rate is relatively the same. His passer rating is relatively the same. His sack rate's even down a little bit. The biggest difference I could find was on the ground. He is running less effectively than he was last year, maybe less often. What's your take on Jayden Daniels year one to Jayden Daniels year two?
Yeah, well, first off, there have been people who've suggested, they can just leave Mariota in, and those people you should walk away from. Like, if you see them on your side of the street, walk to the other side of the street.
Okay.
It's insane. Mariota's fine back up. The first two games he started without Daniels, they went 1-on-1. He looked fine. I give a lot of credit to offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, that despite a lot of the injuries, the offense has largely been okay. Not against the Chiefs this last week, but that's also the nature of this team. One thing works, then something else doesn't work, and then it flips, and nothing's ever good on the same day, same game. So the problem has been that the offense has not looked nearly as exciting and prosperous as it did a year ago. So obviously the quarterback gets some hits for that. The fact that he's unfortunately missed now 3 starts is part of the problem as well, right? I mean, the fits and starts. How do you kind of get things going? I thought their best game over the year overall was probably the Week 5 performance when they won at the Chargers, down 10-zip, came back to win 27-10 on the road against a team that obviously looks to be a legit AFC contender this year. But they have not had their full team out there. Like, the top 3 receivers this year, McLaurin, Samuel, and Noah Brown, the 3 of them have not played together since week 2. Noah Brown's on IR, so we'll see when he comes back. And Jayden Daniels, McLaurin, and Debo have not played together since week 3. So it's hard to judge the offense when they just don't have their main pieces. But look, they also lost Austin Eckler for the season back in week 2. He was their best sort of proven running back, their best pass catcher. They took that away. So I think Jayden Daniels has been fine. It's just that the offense there's just not been any rhythm because everybody's going in and out of the lineup. And I would say, like you mentioned, I think probably the one note is the run game. Like, when he just sort of takes off a scrambling, that's one thing, and he can make yards. But when it's sort of more of the designed read option or a power run or anything, that is where teams have been much better about penning him in and not allowing the runs from last year. So that's something I think that defenses have adjusted to. And then maybe Washington needs to do a better job of that, or maybe that's an offseason project for Jayden to, see what's there and read options better than he has. But by and large, he's been fine. When he's been able to play, he's still delivering some really impressive throws. His accuracy is top notch. But yeah, the whole thing has been off this year, and it's not on him. And again, anybody who's saying they should go stay with Mariota, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, yeah. We're very familiar with those types of folks. So I, when I looked at this Washington offense, obviously the run game is a huge part of it. You know, they have rushed for 124 or more yards in what would it be, 6 of their 8 games. And the thing that stood out to me though, Ben, was they actually have not won a game this season when they rush for fewer than 163 yards in a game. They're 0 and 5 in those situations. That's a pretty high number to have to hit. And the Seahawks haven't allowed more than 89 yards rushing since week 2. They're the best running defense in the NFL. If the Seahawks are able to stop the run for the Commanders, um, how do you feel like the Commanders would be able to hold up on offense? Do they have a counter punch?
Yeah, so it's weird. Like they were leading the league in rushing here as a couple weeks ago, and at no point did watching it did I ever feel that this was a team that was dominating in the run game. They've had this rookie Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, aka Bill, that fantasy football players certainly are aware of, and he looks a lot. He's a lot of fun to watch. Um, Very hard to get down, but he's still a 7th round rookie. I don't know that he's necessarily like a bell cow type back, but they've been using him to some degree in that way. It just has not worked as well the last few weeks. Even this past game without McLaurin. I mean, the Chiefs are a top 5 defense, so it's not like it's just on Washington. Give KC credit, and obviously Seattle has done well this year. So it's not. This is where missing Jayden Daniels hurts. Even if like his individual runs are maybe not as explosive as they have been, he's still getting a good volume of rushes. Mariota can run as well. There's no question about that. It's just not the same type of deal as Jayden. It's not going to put the same fear into a defense. So the counterpunch is if you have Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, you got Zach Ertz as a red zone monster. Like that should work. Like that's not like nothing. But again, if these guys, if the receivers are not fully healthy, or in case of McLaurin unable to go, now all of a sudden the other receivers are very, very pedestrian, and that was the problem without McLaurin, and then without Samuel or a limited Samuel is the other receivers that they have are the defense is just not respecting them. They're putting like 8-9 guys in the box and saying, "Go ahead, throw it to your outside receivers down the field. We don't care. We'll just cover. We'll just jam in around the line of scrimmage and take away your run game and take away some of the quarterback opportunities." And Zach Ertz, where he likes to set up. And again, this last game, there were other guys who got more involved. I think because McLaurin and Samuel were out there, they threw some passes to their tight ends and running backs that maybe they hadn't been doing as much previously. So they have counter punches if healthy, but again, the lack of depth, you take away a McLaurin, and if Debo's not right, then there really isn't much of a counterpunch. But in general, they need to get the run game going. Again, Bill's run lanes have been non-existent the last couple weeks. Jeremy McNichols has been
He's a
solid
nice,
as like
nice player.
yeah, as a that sort of change of pacey, not a change of pace, but just that guy who can come in and just give you a good look as a pass catcher, can pass block, just does all the solid things. Probably could have been like a Bill Belichick running back, 15 years ago, like one of those kinds of guys. But there's no explosiveness there. You're not going to worry about him if you're the defense too much. So that's the problem. They just are running out of bodies when you don't have McLaurin and Samuel healthy or ready to go.
All right, so I'm curious, Ben. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch many Seahawks games or dig in at all to this, but when you look at Seattle and you look at it as a matchup for the Commanders, what stands out to you?
Yeah, well, again, I think if Washington can't get much of a pass rush going, right, then any quarterback is going to be find success. And obviously, JSN's been a monster this year, and Sam Darnold has been really good. So if they're not able to generate enough of a pass rush, then it seems like it's going to be a long day in that regard. Washington's best games this year. So this is why it's confusing. I don't know if you're a DVOA guy. But like they are 7th in DVOA, or at least I should say
They were. They're now 11th. Yeah.
Okay. So the and it's the reason it's confusing is in the 3 wins, they beat the Giants in week 1 when Russell Wilson was a disaster. They beat the Raiders in week 3, and the Raiders have just not been very good this year. They did beat the Chargers at a point though when the Chargers had just lost Joe Alt, and their offensive line was in a tough spot. So the 3 games that they've won, their defensive line has really probably been leading the way. But in the other games, they've just been existing more or less. And now again, that's even compounding with the injuries. So, I know Seattle, trying to build up their line. It feels like they're always trying to build up their offensive line, but Gray Zabel obviously has had a pretty good rookie year from what I gather, right? So it feels like if Seattle can control the line of scrimmage on offense, then they're probably in a pretty good spot because I don't think that Washington, like I said, has enough right now where you're like, oh, they are really problematic. They've got Kinlaw and Deron Payne inside have been really good, but again, it's one thing to be pretty good, but you got to have the other pieces around them to make it matter. And I don't think they necessarily do right now. So again, to me with Washington, it's just come down to the trenches. If their defensive line is able to, be a real force in this game, then I think they've got a shot based on how the season's gone. If not, then it's probably going to be a Seattle win and maybe a comfortable one at that.
I've got a really quick final question. So as far as I can tell, the throwback uniforms for the Commanders are like everything but the helmet. Is that do I have that right? It's still the updated logo.
Yeah, it's still the updated logo with the W as opposed to the Native American
right
silhouette or whatever you want to say. Yeah, they've gone back to certain aspects of the legacy of the history around the building and in the honoring some players and like even things like there was a point where even when they were showing like classic video which for a team that won 3 Super Bowls they would they/NFL Films would try to sort of cover up the various imagery and without getting into all that stuff there was a point obviously where in this society was going a certain way, but also everybody hated the former owner, and really so much of everything was going on around here was about that. And once he left, I think, and then of course they brought in some new guys to run the show who are far more competent and seemingly decent people. All the rhetoric around the team changed a lot. Now, obviously, they did change the name. And I don't think the name's not coming back. The owners have said that as much, but at the same time, they're at least easing their way back into some of the history of the with the jerseys and the logos. So I don't know that they'll go all the way back to the old school logos, but it wouldn't surprise me to some degree versus where we were a few years ago when there was no chance.
Yeah, it's just like it occurred to me as I was doing the throwbacks. It's a little bit more challenging for teams that have changed their names a couple times and have some sensitive background. So anyway, Ben, thank you so much. Tell folks where they can find you and anything you've got coming up that they should check out.
Yeah, no, the site is lastmanstandig.substack.com. You can find my podcast, also Last Man Standig, wherever you do your podcasts. And like I said, for Washington right now, I know the game matters, but they're at a really interesting crossroads here with the trade deadline a week away and just not at the moment. There's no reason to really think this is a team that's contending, but they also haven't been healthy. So the front office is going to have to make some really interesting calls here before the trade deadline. Do they think they still have a chance to do something here, or do they need to start kind of to your point earlier on, like take what the pieces they have, move it towards building towards the future with Jayden Daniels rather than having to sort of play this, 1-year contract game over and over and over again. I think that's an interesting dilemma. If they lose this game, which the odds makers are probably going to say, I haven't seen the line even, but like I
3 to 3.5 in favor of the Seahawks right now.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so, if they lose this game and it's going to be challenging, then that conversation really starts to get heated.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, Ben. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Wish you well. And maybe I will see you in the press box on Sunday.
Yeah, no, look forward to it. Definitely will say hi.
All right. Take care. That is Ben Standig, last man stand. Actually, I think the last man Standig moniker is apt for this week because I feel like this is the last stand for the Commanders for this season. And Ben kind of was talking about that. As I went through and looked at this matchup while I was writing my Tail of the Tape article yesterday over on hawkblogger.com, I was getting kind of frustrated, to be honest, because I really did I'm a big fan of Dan Quinn for a lot of reasons. I love Bobby Wagner. I even like Nick Bellor's on this team, and you got Larry Izzo coaching special teams, and And I love Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Like, there's a lot of guys I certainly can root for, but I hated their offseason, man. I hated it. I was like, what are you doing? Laremy Tunsil made sense, but to not add more weaponry or to think Deebo Samuel, that like him being a cast off from San Francisco, that he was going to rekindle something meaningful. Like, even if he had a good year, it was going to be the last good year. Like, why not get a young receiver to start building rapport with your like all-world quarterback? I just hated it. I was so mad about it. It wasn't even my team, and I was mad about it. And I think some of that's come to the forefront because as good as Scary Terry McLaurin is, Scary Terry, so near Halloween, we'll see how that goes. But he's almost 30 or in that range. I think he's like 29, and I just don't know that you can count on that for 3 years being top shelf production. A lot of wide receivers at that age start to decline. Terry McLaurin, I've loved forever. He and Larry Fitzgerald should sit down for beers and just stare at each other and laugh and cry. They're both two of the best receivers in history that have had to deal with some of the worst quarterback play and still are good. Like, that's how good they are, is they can make some of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL still look passable and still pile up big numbers with them. So anyway, it's if the Commanders lose this game and they fall to 3-6, and then they have to face the Lions the next week, which I think you'd expect them to lose that game. You're talking about being 3-8 at that point, and 3-7 at that point. You're done. Like, you're pretty much done. And so, yeah, I think that is probably the biggest advantage for the Commanders in this game, is just this intangible of Dan Quinn, that team. They're going to give every last drop that they've got in getting a win to get a win this game on Sunday night, prime time at home against an NFC opponent that's traveling across the country. So I think you're going to get everything that they can offer. And people say, well, the Seahawks are going to give everything they can. Yeah, yes, sure. At the same time, there is something to just the desperation of being in that moment. Now, just about everything else, and I'm going to go through it now with you, just about everything else, it doesn't favor them. It does not favor them. And I don't like this matchup for the Commanders. I love it for the Seahawks. That doesn't mean it's going to go exactly the way we want it to go, but that's just kind of that's kind of how I see it at this point. And I'll show you guys as we get into tail of the tape what I mean by that. So let me get my screen shared with you guys, and we will get into some of this together. Before I do that, let's check in on super chats and other good stuff. So we've got one super chat here. It is Jay Malfair has joined as a new member on YouTube. Love it. Welcome to the party. Happy to have you. I told you guys we had an opening in Ring of Honor on patreon.com/hawkblogger. It's rare to have those. There's only 12 spots and it's gone. It's gone. So if somebody's desperate to get into the Ring of Honor for patreon.com/hawkblogger, let me know. I'll consider expanding, but for right now, we're keeping it at 12 folks. But you can join as patreon.com/hawkblogger, get ad-free audio for this show, also get access to the Discord server, and get verified over at hbtix.com. So now is a great time to list your tickets for the Arizona game or the Vikings game or any of the other games coming up, or to buy tickets for those games. Sell tickets to Seahawks fans by Seahawks fans over at hbtix.com. Okay, so let me put this on stage here, and I'm gonna have to make our comments go away so we can see this together well. So let me zoom in just a little bit more. Make it nice and visible for you guys. All right. So we're going to go through the numbers in this matchup, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the players as well, and the scheme as well. But let's just look at it objectively. That's what the numbers lets us do. Take emotion out of it and just look at it. So if you go from a DVOA perspective, and again, this is a opponent adjusted measure of team efficiency. The Seahawks dropped from number 1 to number 2. The Colts finally caught them, as I think they should, given how they've played this season. Seahawks are the second. The Commanders dropped from 7th to 11th, so they're outside the top 10. It was surprising to me last week when I looked at this that the Commanders were in the top 10. I was like, what? I think I know a little bit more about why, but in any event, that was surprising. They're still at 11. When I look at this team, I don't see the 11th best, most efficient team in the NFL. I just don't. But it is what the numbers say, at least the DVOA numbers. From comparing the Washington offense, that is the 17th ranked DVOA offense against the Seahawks' 3rd ranked DVOA defense. When you break it down a little further, they are the 15th ranked run offense and the 15th ranked pass offense. The Seahawks are 2nd and 4th, respectively. So pretty big mismatch in that regard. Very big advantage for the Seahawks when the Commanders have the football. You flip over to the other side, the Seahawks have the 6th ranked offense by DVOA. The Commanders have the 17th ranked defense. When you dig in a little further there, it is the Seahawks have the 22nd ranked run offense, but the 2nd ranked pass offense. Well, Commanders 19 and 19. They're the 19th ranked run defense and the 19th ranked pass defense. So their defense is even worse than their offense, even though both of them overall are ranked 17. The defense is not doing anything particularly well. The one unit that is elite is their special teams. It is legitimately very good. The coverage is fantastic. I'll show you some special teams numbers in a bit. They have had some kicking issues. I didn't talk to Ben about that, but they had their kicker, Matt Gay, missed the last game against the Chiefs, I should say, with a back issue. We'll see if he is out for this one. But generally speaking, it's been a very good. Larry Izzo coaching a great special teams unit, as he often does. Now, the other parts of this DVOA chart that I always show and tail the tape is this ability to defend different types of receivers. So they track wide receiver 1s, wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3s, tight ends, running backs as receivers. There's no good news for the Commanders there. They're 25th against wide receiver 1s, 17th against wide receiver 2s, 23rd against wide receiver 3s, 27th against tight ends, 23rd against running backs as receivers. No bueno. Like, that's just not good. So the only place DVOA wise that the Commanders have an advantage is their run defense at 19 is a little better than the Seahawks run offense at 22, but I've got some other numbers that I don't know if it's a good matchup even in that regard for them. So not great if you're a Commanders fan from a DVOA perspective. So let's look when the Seahawks have the ball on offense. How do things look? And let me get more in picture for you all. Did that get it all? Yes, it did. I'll make it a little bit smaller. There we go. So this is when the Seahawks have the ball on offense, and you've got the Commanders are the 21st defense in points allowed, 27th in yards allowed, 29th in yards per play. So you've got the 3rd ranked yards per play offense going up against the 29th ranked yards per play defense. Not good for the Commanders, at least in that regard. EPA is a little bit closer. Seahawks are 14th in EPA per play. The Commanders are 24th, but still clear advantage for Seattle. The Seahawks 3rd down percentage, they're 27th after the last 2 games. The Commanders have some advantage there. Red zone, Seahawks have a big advantage. The Commanders are one of the worst red zone defenses. We got talking about the rushing game, that there's some advantage for the Commanders there. Statistically, yes, like Seahawks are 31st in yards per rush, 28th in rush EPA. It's not good. It is not good. It's legitimately the worst statistical part of this team. And the Commanders are not that great either. They're like slightly below average. They're 19th and 18th in that regard. But then you've got a rarity, at least for my tail of the tape, a 1 versus 32. These don't happen that often, where you've got the number 1 ranked team in something going against the dead last team in the same thing. Yards per attempt, the Seahawks are still number 1 in the NFL in yards per attempt. The Commanders are dead last, 32nd in yards per attempt. So their pass defense has given up a lot of big plays. And if you drop your eyes down to the explosive pass rate, by the way, I switched this up this week. Not that anyone cares. I've been using the old Pete Carroll 16 plus yards as an explosive pass and 12 plus yards in an explosive rush. No one else uses that besides Pete and me, because I was kind of sticking with it. But it also starts getting messed up because I used to do the overall explosive play count. But once you start having bye weeks, certain teams have more games than more games than other teams. And so I got to a percentage of play as opposed to an absolute number. So this is looking at the explosive play rates for both teams. Seahawks passing offense is the number 1 explosive passing offense in football. And the Commanders' explosive passing defense is 26th. So I was honestly really looking forward to seeing JSN against against Lattimore. I'll just stick with that. Because Lattimore has been Marshawn Lattimore. Sorry, I should know that. Lattimore has been just absolutely trashed by a lot of receivers. I'll be honest, the last 2 games I watched him play, I thought he was playing really good. So I don't know that it's going to be as much of a mismatch as I had hoped it would be. I thought it would just be taking candy from baby. I don't think it's that. I also really liked Mikey Sainristil coming out of a college from Michigan. Mike McDonald knows him well, but he has not been that great this year. I just feel like JSN against anybody. I mean, he just made Derek Stingley Jr. look like a bad corner, or at least an average corner. That's a pretty big advantage in this game. And then you've got Bobby Wagner at linebacker. And to Ben's point earlier, if you can get people running across his face, his horizontal ability to catch up is not great. The other thing that I found when I was doing my research on this game was the Commanders have been okay in run defense, but when it comes to defending, outside runs, not so good. So, they rank 27th in the NFL defending the outside zone. They give up 5.5 yards per carry. They are 26th in all runs outside the tackles, where they're giving up 5.7 yards per carry. And it makes a lot of sense because you've got a team in the Commanders that have kind of older, slower linebackers. And when you get those guys trying to run horizontally, then it's a problem. They aren't able to catch up. When you then have them having to anticipate outside runs, like Bobby's going to read those things probably really well. He'll probably start cheating and getting over. Guess what? You're really setting that team up for bootleg and play action. And you're going to have people running across the other direction. This could be a game where AJ Barner, Elijah Arroyo, maybe Eric Saubert, whoever, could have some big moments. I think if Robbie Oots plays, this could be a game where he shows up as a receiver, not just as a blocker, because I think play action is going to be definitely available against this team. In fact, one thing I didn't look up, let's take a look at it now. I have not looked at how the Commanders have done against play action on the year. Remember, the Texans were the number 1 play action defense in the NFL coming into that game against the Seahawks. Now, for whatever reason, the NFL site there we go. Finally. Let's get to team defense against play action. All right, so we're going to go to pass defense, and we're going to go to play action, and we're going to go through EPA per pass. And where do the Commanders show up? I haven't seen this. Not good. 21st. Yeah, so not great. Not great. So yeah, I like pretty much everything the Seahawks are designed to do does not really match up with where the Commanders are strong. Now, where are the Commanders strong? I think they're strong up the middle. Wagner's still going to plug runs up the middle. Deron Payne as a defensive tackle, very stout, has been playing well. Javon Kinlaw is a better run defender than he is a pass rusher. So that's all good. I think Jacob Martin has been rushing the passer pretty well, very relentlessly. I think he can cause some challenges. Although, I mean, I like the Seahawks tackle play, so I'm not as concerned. Those are really the places that, I mean, running up the middle is probably their best thing that they stop. There are some, I've liked the effort that they get in their pass rush, and I think they do disrupt an offensive line. So they could disrupt the Seahawks interior offensive line if you're looking for places where they might have an advantage. But it's rough. This is the Commanders' pass defense. Their coverage grade is 30th in the NFL by PFF as a team. So the coverage has just not been good. It's just not been good. So I think that they are going to need to play off of energy and vibes and hope that they get some benefit of bad mistakes by the Seahawks, because otherwise the Seahawks should score. Honestly, they should score at least 27, 28 points. I think you should be thinking about 30 plus points against this defense. Honestly, I think that's not out of the question in this game. Now, if we look at the Seahawks when the Commanders have the ball, so the Seahawks are on defense. Similarly, it's not a lot of great news for the Commanders. It sounds like Jayden Daniels is going to give it a go. I would expect them to try to play him. How he does with a hamstring injury as a runner, I don't know. This might be one of those games where he plays but is more of a pocket player, which takes away one of his big things. I don't know. We'll find out. I hope he plays because he's a fun player to watch. And I'd love to see the Seahawks go up against him. And so it's also hard to kind of gauge the numbers because he's missed a few games. Marcus Mariota's played and started. So what is this offense? How is it different? The run game changes a little bit when Mariota's in there. They're much more likely to do designed runs for Jayden Daniels. It's also Jayden Daniels is more of a scrambler. Mariota does not break the pocket quite as much as Jayden Daniels does. But one of the biggest things here is Jayden Daniels has really struggled against pressure. So the difference between Jayden Daniels as like when he is kept clean, he has an 83.3 grade. He is I don't have that up. It was a different number. When he is blitzed, his grade drops to 55.9, which is 31st in the NFL, versus 83.3 when there's no blitz, which is 6th in the NFL. So he goes from one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL to one of the worst when he is pressured. Now, he also doesn't deal with just pass pressure, whether it's blitz or not, very well. He goes from, let's see. He is let me make sure I've got the right numbers here. Okay. Jayden Daniels goes from where was it? Where's Jayden? There he is. He goes from the 24th ranked passer when he's under pressure. He has a 46 passing grade to the 7th ranked passer when he's not pressure, when he's kept clean. He has an 87.2 grade. If I were to go through and do who has the biggest deltas between when they're pressured and when they're not, he'd be up on that list. He might be number one. And I did this last year during the offseason, or this year during the offseason, to kind of look. People talk about how they perform under pressure because they were dissing on Sam Darnold. Well, I looked at it and it was kind of like, well, Sam Darnold doesn't have the biggest delta when he is pressured versus non-pressured. So I don't know. I mean, it looks like this is a big deal for Jayden Daniels, and it's not as big of a deal for Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota was 9th overall, has the 9th best passing grade when under pressure, and he also has a much better grade when blitzed. So there are some disadvantages for the Commanders when Jayden Daniels is in there. He is more susceptible to pressure, and if Laremy Tunsil cannot play, my goodness. Josh Connerly Jr., their rookie right tackle, went to University of Oregon. He's from Washington. I was not high on him as a prospect. There was a lot of guys that really were. I had some long conversations with analysts that I respect. I just didn't see it. He has allowed the 3rd most pressures of any offensive lineman, tackle or otherwise, in the NFL this year. He has been a turnstile at right tackle. If you then put Brandon Coleman in at left tackle, even though he played okay against the Chiefs, I just feel like the Seahawks can pick wherever they want to send pressure, and they're going to be able to really disrupt this Washington offense. And then you heard my number, which I think is the most wild number. They have not won a game when they rushed for fewer than 163 yards. That's a lot of rushing yards. Like, the Seahawks do not allow teams to run the ball that effectively. They're the number 1 run defense in the NFL by rushing yards, by EPA per rush, by yards per rush. Pick your number. They're the best rushing defense in the NFL. If you stop this Commanders team, which is going to keep trying to run, and they're going to be physical, and they're going to try to break tackles, I don't know. And then Deebo Samuel, we all know Deebo Samuel. I feel like the absolute ideal defender to stop Deebo Samuel is Nick Eamon-Wari. Like 6'3", 220 plus, fast, strong, good tackler. He's a better athlete than Deebo Samuel, especially at this age for Deebo Samuel. So I don't see these little screens to Deebo Samuel being the big plays that maybe the Commanders hoped they would be. Terry McLaurin's a legitimately great player. If he plays, he can cause some challenges no matter who you have guarding him. And then Zach Ertz is a guy that at tight end, even though he's 35 plus years old, he still has 4 touchdowns. He can find open spaces. He's a good catcher of the football. So they do have some guys, but it's pretty slim pickings, to be honest. I like Luke McCaffrey. He's had a better second season. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the running back, the rookie running back, he's okay. But if the Seahawks stop the run, I just don't see how the Commanders are going to put up. I mean, honestly, like points wise, we could be talking 10 points for the Commanders. Wouldn't shock me. I don't see what their advantage is there. So taking a look quickly at special teams, like I said, they've had some kicking problems. They've missed a number of field goals, and so they are 30th in the NFL out of 32 teams in accuracy so far. And then as far as coverage, though, they're excellent. 6th in the NFL in covering punts, 6th in the NFL in covering kicks. Seahawks are pretty good in that regard themselves. And the return game for the Commanders is also pretty good. They have the number 1 top kick return average, and they're number 5 in yards per punt. They do have a punt return for touchdown, so keep an eye on that. So, I mean, I look at this matchup, and there's just advantages everywhere. I think the Seahawks linebackers have advantages. I think the defensive line has massive advantages. You're going to be getting Derek Hall back. with Uchenna Nwosu and DeMarcus Lawrence and Boye Mafe. DeMarcus Lawrence and Uchenna Nwosu have like asserted themselves as legitimately dangerous pass rushers when they're in there together, especially they're great run defenders. Then you got hopefully Devin Witherspoon, Julian Love coming back as well. The secondary being able to play, whether if they want to play dime, this is a great test for that, because I think they're going to try to do that, but they don't even need to necessarily. They could, but that would have Devin Witherspoon and Nicky Minori on the field with Josh Jobe and Tariq Woolen. The Commanders would try to test that from a run perspective. I'm not sure they would be able to run against the Seahawks defensive line and Ernest Jones and Nicky Minori and Devin Witherspoon, who are all very good run defenders in that scenario. So if the Seahawks can play dime in this game and they can stop the run, look out. I think the Commanders are going to be in a world of hurt. And you guys have seen me. Like I told you last time, I thought the Texans were a ideal matchup, like from a opponent perspective, for what the Seahawks were doing on offense. I saw some reasons that could be a really close game. Seahawks outclassed them to the point where they made so many mistakes that it was still a relatively close game. But that game could have been 35 plus point differential for sure. This game, honestly, the Seahawks should win this game comfortably. The biggest advantage I'll come back to is you've got a desperate team that's cornered and you can't be sure how they are going to respond in that situation. And Jayden Daniels is a legitimate like magician back there. He can do some amazing things. So I'm not going to sit here and just relax, but there is nobody that could credibly look at both of these teams and be like, oh yeah, Commanders should win this one. Like there is not a credible story for why you would say that. Now, I've got a couple other things to cover before we wrap. Before we get to those, reminder, SimplySeattle.com. Use code HawkBlogger15 will get you 15% off the best Seattle sports gear out there. Seahawks, Mariners, Huskies, Storm, whoever, Sounders, whoever is your team, go to SimplySeattle.com. Use code HawkBlogger15. Go to JKBoots.com/HawkBlogger and get a great deal on the best boots you're going to own. Made in Washington over in Spokane. They're great. Keep an eye on that. And then make sure you download the Sleeper app. Great place to keep track of your fantasy football team. And now, for at least a limited time, you can get $20 without making a deposit. And then if you do use the promo code HAWKS, you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for detail. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Okay, I think we saw another super chat jump in there and says, B to A Sunday night. Maybe from Hawk Scoots. Look, we've talked about this. The Seahawks need to stop playing with their food. They just need to do it. Like, eat your veggies, get out of town with a comfortable win. Even the Jags game, I was relatively comfortable, but it got closer at the end. The Commanders don't have the Jags defense to kind of lean on. And the Jags defense is okay. It's decent. I think it's better than the Commanders defense. Seahawks just have to play their game, and they will definitely win. If they get there and they start messing around and you see Clint Kubiak calling, halfback options and you see weird shit going on, if you see Sam Darnold like breaking the pocket in his own end zone, like stuff like that, you can absolutely lose a game in this. But one of the things I'm really looking forward to is the last time the Seahawks played, prime time was Thursday against the Arizona Cardinals, and then Monday night last time against the Texans. I think Sam Darnold has generally impressed people. Now, he's had some bad moments as well, but he's generally impressed people. I think this is a primetime game and a chance for everyone in the nation's going to be watching it. This isn't one of the double headers. This isn't a 7 p.m. Pacific time game. It is primetime Sunday Night Football, the only game on. And he'll be going against Jayden Daniels, most likely, who is a well-respected quarterback. A big chance for him, honestly. I know that Sam Darnold won't think about it that way, but, you know, continuing to build back the narrative of what kind of player he wants to be, I think this is a big part of it. And let's see if the running game can continue to make a little bit of progress. I actually noted some progress against the Texans, even though all the numbers weren't perfect. There was some improvement there, and we'll see what comes out of the bye week. There's still a chance that there's going to be a trade today. I don't know if I expect it or not. My guess is if there's no trades by now, you probably won't see one till next week after this game, and maybe not at all. So we'll see. I think I'll talk more about some of that stuff probably tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a double pod day. Unfortunately, our guest for tomorrow, Matt Harmon, has a pretty serious puppy issue he's got to tend to with a vet. So the only appointment they had overlapped with our time. So we're not going to be able to have Matt on, but we'll do something else tomorrow. We'll have fun as usual. And then 5 o'clock tomorrow night. Tomorrow night will be Real Hawk Talk, not tonight. So Thursday night, Jeff Simmons and Evan Hill and I will get back for Real Hawk Talk. So keep an eye on that. With that, I will be at the VMAC today to talk to Sam Darnold, I believe, and the Coach McDonald and others. I'll get in the locker room. We'll get our official practice report. And if there's anything big, you know, I'll be back on with you later today. All right. Until then, have a great rest of your Wednesday. I'm Brian Nemhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.